Hello and thanks for staying with us. Welcome to Focus Nigeria. I am Amechi Anapwe. Based on the provisions of the Electoral Act as amended, an election petition case must be determined by a tribunal within a period of 180 days. This means that from the day the petition was filed, which must be filed within 21 days after the declaration of results by INEC. The same rules also applies to petition filed by the People's Democratic Party (PDP) at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, challenging the victory of Muhammad Buhari at the presidential election. The PDP filed its petition on May 16, 2019, beating the 21 days deadline. Since the matter opened at the Court of Appeal, pre-hearing issues, applications, and interlocutory applications, affidavits, counter-affidavits, counter-motions are still going on after the petition was filed on March 18. Today, June 27, makes it the 101 day that the PDP petition was filed. So technically, the tribunal has 79 days to dispense with the matter. Unfortunately, the substantive case and hearing is yet to commence, with the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal adjourning proceedings to July 1, 2019 to continue with pre-hearing issues and to enable the petitioner respond to the counter-affidavit filed by the defendants. More time is being lost before the main trial starts. By July 1, it would have been 105 days since the PDP filed its petition, meaning the tribunal has 75 days to give judgment. Nobody is even sure when the main hearing will start.
Sensitive petition which the whole world is looking at and looking up to know its outcome. So I believe that it is for all parties to cooperate to ensure that justice is not only done, but is seen manifestly to have been done.
With over 400 witnesses called by the PDP to testify and prove his case, and the defendants, the APC and INEC also lining up their own witnesses, how long will it take the tribunal to do justice to that case? Let's see how this will play out. But a lot of people are already suggesting that weekend trials may be in place, even extending up to late hours of the day to enable the tribunal to really dispense with the case. Okay, after a few days, that a group that called itself stakeholders of the All Progressives Congress, APC, carried out protests in Abuja and Kaduna, asking President Muhammad Buhari to dismantle the cabal said to be around him and said to have taken full charge of his government. On Wednesday in Abuja, another group staged a counter-protest. They alleged that sabotage within the confines of the power is targeted at those that have been mentioned as being too close and influential around the president, namely the president's chief of staff, Abba Kyari, his uncle, Mamandaura, and associate, Issa Funtua.
We have heard of cabal. We don't know whether there is a cabal or not. But we are saying, as APC stakeholder, only President Muhammadu Buhari and Yemi Osinbajo should make all the decisions, because they are the ones we gave our mandate to freely, and because they are the ones we voted for. Only those two men should make decisions. Any other person is an interloper and an usurper.
So telling us now that the man we know, we believe, we know, we trust, we voted back, is not the one willing Nigeria, is out of place. That's why today we had to gather Nigerians across the federation to do a solidarity march to ensure that we take that same message we took before the election, that the election was over, politics was over. Now we are talking about integration.
Okay, the argument is the President Muhammad Buhari fully in charge? Is he the one calling the shots? Some people said no, the cabal around him are usurping presidential powers. The argument goes on. Before now, it's been whether it is Muhammad Buhari we know or Jibril from Sudan. Okay, going ahead, this is a very funny development. The people are exercising their right to protest, so you give them all the room to protest. How come a country as big as Nigeria is yet to ascertain with accuracy the exact amount that goes to its federal lawmakers on a monthly basis? It is quite funny and annoying that this is so. It speaks volumes about accountability and probity in the management of public funds and resources. The matter has been on for decades, and yet the real truth is yet to be established. Senate President Ahmed Lawan told Nigerians recently that the monthly pay of a senator, including himself, is just 750,000 naira.
I never believed that there is anything called jumbo pay to the National Assembly. The National Assembly members, both the Senate and the House, receive what is their salaries, and I receive 750,000 as my salary. But I need to function as a senator. My office needs to be properly funded. And therefore, I cannot conduct my oversight without some funding. So I believe that Nigerians need to understand this. We need to continue to engage with the Nigerians, and I will also urge you that you continue to explain to Nigerians. They deserve to be explained to. They deserve to know how their resources are utilized, and this will continue to do. But I believe that the National Assembly needs proper funding.
Expectedly, the statement coming from the Senate President that the monthly pay of a senator is 750,000 has elicited some reactions. Professor Issa Sege is of the opinion that a senator takes home close to 15 million monthly. This is after adding the salary and all the other many allowances he claims go the way of a senator. As the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, the body that fixes the remuneration of lawmakers, they will give you their own figure. Ask the people, including journalists and investigators, they give you a definite and particular figure, different from each other. Lawmakers themselves put the question to them, they also give you a disparating figure. So when will the truth be resolved? When will we finally get to the truth? The genuine and the real take-home of a federal lawmaker in Nigeria? Anyway, we'll get to that. Our conversation will center around the Nigerian presidency. Just almost 1 month after he was sworn in, the president is seen moving in some directions. Some few appointments have been made. Pressures on him to do more. Femi Falana, human rights lawyer, recently saying the personal aides of the president are acting illegally without an official announcement. The National Assembly on recess. When they come back, Nigerians are hoping the ministerial list would have been ready. What are the priorities, or what should be the direction this administration should take in the next 3 years and 11 months that is left? What of alarm raised by the Emir of Kano that Nigeria is nearly broke, that without the issue of subsidies for petroleum products and electricity being put off, Nigeria will collapse as up to 70% of its revenue go to debt servicing. What should be the priorities of the president? Professor Jideofor Adibe is a professor of political science and international relations at the Nasarawa State University in Kefi. He's also a newspaper columnist. He'll be joining me to weigh in on these issues, prescribing policy options for the president. Please do join us.
The issues as they break. The political actors.
Unless we get a cure for what is ailing our polity, then we will continue to make efforts to perfect it.
Let's keep talking. Sometimes one they don't even need to hear, they have to say it. It is their own to be defended.
We all desire a united Nigeria. But let nobody tell us that that united Nigeria that all of us want to become will not be negotiated.
The scheming and the intrigue.
In a democracy, the government should be afraid of the people, not the people should be afraid of the government.
If this ugly scenario is not nipped in the bud, I'm telling you there will be a time when you are sleeping in your house, you cannot sleep with your 2 eyes closed. This is a kangaroo coup.
We follow them all. Follow in-depth and no-holds-barred analysis. Feel the pulse of Nigeria's democratic growth only on AIT.
Let it be known to all of us that in this new dispensation, there's no more monkey the walk and nature.
Democracy Today. Nigeria's authority on politics on AIT.
Every day, knotty issues evolve in Nigeria's growing democracy.
Removing fossil fuel subsidies is the right way to go.
We are not in a situation to wake up one day and just remove subsidy.
But how much of these issues do the people understand or appreciate?
The money available to state governments is enormous because we saw them buying votes in such a manner that does not show that they are poor people.
The issues can be complex or deliberately mystified. That's where the people are lost in the democratic process. On Jigsaw, the bold, incisive and reliable analyst Benga Aruleba lays bare the issues and demystifies the concepts. Jigsaw, every Wednesday at 11 p.m. Jigsaw, putting the pieces together, demystifying the issues. The Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble and cohesive Nigeria which guarantees equity, fairness, justice and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, Politics and Power on AIT.
Thank you so much for staying with us. My guest is seated, Professor Jideofor Dibe of Political Science and International Relations Department, Nasarawa State University in Kefi, and a columnist, a newspaper columnist, a writer with the Daily Trust. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
It's already a countdown for the president's second term in office. I just raised the poster that is 3 years, 11 months left in 2 days' time. So the expectation is that he should make up on lost grounds, rely on the experience of last 4 years to make more impact, deliver on his election promises, make sure the right team is in place to really hit the ground running. What are your expectations?
Well, technically, the second term has already started. It started effectively on the 29th of May. About hitting the ground running, many people expected that some of the lost grounds in the first term, like taking 6 months to constitute a cabinet, that the president was going to learn about people's dissatisfaction. If he did, he has not shown it, because 29 May came and went and nothing was done. People thought he was going to make some announcement and make some key appointments. Some people said 12th of June. 12th of June came and went. There are two ways to look at this. Some people might say he doesn't like to be bullied by public opinion. Others might regard it as insensitive. The point is that a president must also be sensitive to the environment, to the feelings of the people he governs. And
that's having a good mix.
A good mix, not being bullied by public, because let's face it, leadership is not a popularity contest. On the other hand, you must be sensitive. It's not popularity contest in the sense that you have your own direction, you have your own beliefs, and you believe that ultimately people will see that you're right. That's why it's called leadership. You're leading. On the other hand, when nothing is happening, when nothing has changed, and people will believe, well, is this stubbornness or is this being principled? That is what we have to find out. If
there's always a thin line between being stubborn and being principled.
Being principled, that's how do you navigate it? I think what ultimately decides and defines that thin line is if in the end you are proved correct in the path you choose. If, for example, people believe that you don't listen to anybody and you have made up your mind that this thing you believe in is the right direction, and eventually it happens that you're right, and people are seeing the benefit, then you are a leader.
So the end justifies the means?
In a way, yes. I mean, I wouldn't put it that way, because the process of attaining that means is also very important. But you can't just because you want to be seen as not being bullied. Then the convention that people have been observing since the time of Washington, of giving inaugural, you didn't give it. And people made up for all manner of excuses for you. And then after a while, people will just say, well, it's either arrogance or you are insensitive.
That's why it's always very important to take key decisions are in the early part of an administration. I recall former British Prime Minister in 2015 advised the president to take strong decisions while the goodwill was still
yeah, that was there. Let me say I was part of those invited. There was something that the APC did at that time which was very profound. And I think it was organized by Kayode Fayemi, the governor of Ekiti State. They brought all these experts from all over the world. They wanted to look at the APC program and tease out the implementable parts of it. I had the privilege that I was invited as a discussant on foreign policy. And we thought this government...
That was when?
That was just, I think, May 2015.
Okay, 4 years ago.
Yes, we thought, look, this government is going to get it right. But you know what? They never even looked at that. I don't think they even looked at that document. And this something is playing out. Why
the document produced by the APC hierarchy?
It's not a... I don't support any party. I support individuals.
Okay, those... a document produced by those around the president?
Yeah, but it was Kayode Fayemi then who organized it.
I think he played a part in the... election, in the campaign structure.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I know that we got, I wasn't part of it, but I know he brought people, experts from across the world on different issues. And I do recall that I discussed the foreign policy with Abike Dabirowa and Baba Ahmed gave the paper on foreign policy. There are so many experts he brought, and even those of us who were critical, who were wondering whether he was going to be a single story president who would just be fighting corruption, who were just impressed. Said, look, these people are really determined that they were going to get things right. But then we never heard about it. But to come back again, people made all manner of excuses for him on why inaugural wasn't presented. Well, we
That's
thought
the inaugural address
on 29th, and I can tell you, I'm trying it. I haven't been able to recall in living memory since George Washington presented his own as the first president of the U.S. Any leader in a democracy that failed to do that, because it's often like a bond, an agreement where you reenact a covenant between you and the people.
But the one that came on June 12th, would it not?
That was an inaugural, but June 12th is supposed to be ceremonial. It's supposed to be celebrating the Independence Day. The date you were officially starting your tenure was 29th of May. That was the inaugural. That's why in my piece I wrote a column say the speech he made on June 12th, he presented an inaugural speech rather than a ceremonial. Because if you look at that speech, what people will be looking is look at the history of democratic struggle. It is about the journey of democracy and where we are.
I saw a lot of critics say on a democracy day, the party issue should take backstage. It should have come up on the inaugural stage.
Well, I don't know whether party, but it's just about how we arrived here. It is about celebrating democracy. But if you look at the content, I think he numbered it 1 to 74. If you look at it, there was a little mention about the democratic struggle, which appeared like an afterthought, a footnote. So he presented at the inaugural, the time he should have presented a ceremonial speech, a speech on democracy. You honored Abiola, which I think was the right thing to do, but where was it then celebrated? You have then to give us the reasons why we are changing this. I mean, he has his own style, let's say that, and as you mentioned.
And that style is, he was accused in the last 4 years of doing it all alone. At some point, just after he was elected in 2015, the presidency said the promises made by some other, the 100 convenants, is not their own. They kind of disowned it. Now, a lot of people believe the president in the last 4 years did it all alone without much input from the party. Now, what do you expect him to do this time around? What kind of input do you expect the party to make, associates to make, and others?
I think it's to find a balance. Because the party, yes, was the vehicle through which you came to power. You were not an independent candidate. So the party is supposed to make an input. But those who are talking about party supremacy, forget that we are not in a parliamentary system. It is not that the party, even when in a parliamentary system, sometimes they have what they call conscience vote. They allow party members to vote according to their conscience.
And not to party,
yes, and not necessarily along party lines. And the reason is that in a parliamentary system, when a government loses key votes, the government collapses. So it is not the same thing in a presidential system.
Where the party virtually disappears after the election.
Yes, they are still there in terms of articulating and aggregating interests and policies and everything. They are still there, but it's not as people would think to say party supremacy, party says this and that. No, the president is elected by the generality of Nigerians, and he's supposed to be able to be sensitive to what people need. At the same time, be mindful of the party. It's just
that's another mix.
It's another mix. It's just like your identity. Every individual embodies a mosaic of identities. You are an Hausa man or Igbo man. You have your religion. Sometimes they crisscross. Sometimes they reinforce. It's being able to navigate these things very well. And we are waiting. I'm actually extremely disappointed that up till now, the president has not named key cabinets. You know, even something as mundane as your media spokesman. I don't think it can be explained that way. And we might try to massage it, but in the end, that sense of urgency, you are talking about all the forecasts, that this economic scenario this time around may not be very well, especially with the slowdown in China. We don't know how it's going to affect us. And what we need to do is to we have this sense of urgency. You know,
to prevent
uncertainties that, in fact, if I was expecting, I was one of those who thought that, look, on May 29th, Buhari will going to surprise Nigerians. There was no surprise.
Now, you mentioned cabinet. We know National Assembly is on recess very soon. It will reconvene. But for the immediate personnel, as Chief of Staff, SGF, media aides, special advisors.
Yes, you need people to, I think in the first time he did say something, he was reported in the press to have said, that ministers had really no substantive function.
He referred to them as noisemakers.
Noisemakers. So he relied on permanent secretaries and heads.
Bureaucrats.
So in his own perhaps calculation, he was thinking he was saving money. But that's probably one of the things that pushed us into recession. And now we are going on the same trajectory. And we need to be very, if you have a team, known team, at least you have people, some of them will be able to have the courage to walk up to you in a nice manner and respectful manner and say, oh God, we ought to do this differently. And I think after that, you can't have a cabinet of 30 without having at least some of them who be people of their own, who know who know how to navigate that sensitive line between loyalty and being able to tell the leader, and loyalty and being able to tell you the truth.
Well, in my prologue, I highlighted the two positions taken by two different sets of protesters, all within the All Progressives Congress. Okay. One insisting that what they call the cabal around the president must be dismantled and that the president should take charge. The other saying, no, these are associates that you find anywhere around any president and that the president is in charge. So even within the kitchen cabinet, cabal, close associates, whatever you call it, of the president, there is still some disagreement of who should be around the president.
Let me say that what we call a cabal, in fact, in political science, there's what we call the iron law of oligarchy. And we say that whoever talks about, any organization talks about oligarchy, that is the tendency of a small group of people to be able to exercise disproportionate influence in any regime. That is normal. The issue we are going to concern is not whether you are ruling by a cabal or not, but whether things are getting done. And irrespective of whatever government you constitute, you must have these centers of powers. So under Obasanjo,
the powers under the president of Federal Republic of Nigeria is so enormous.
So one
man can wield it.
You have to give them some measure of freedom. Under Obasanjo, for example, one got the sense that Babangida, that he will allow these centers of power to compete and be able to tease out something useful and then provide a direction. Sometimes in our own case, you don't really know the competing centers of power. who was representing the president or not. So that's one of the things we expect president now to be able to do to put direction. Let me say one other thing. When people talk about his age, I don't buy it, because you are the president. You are not president to lead in a 100-meter dash. If you look at the frontline contenders in the next year's presidential election in the US, Bernie Sanders is 78, Biden is 76. The other man, Trump himself, I think is 74, thereabout. So it's not about 74. Nobody's making a bone out of it, because the job of a chief executive is not to be a 100-meter distant runner. It is the ability to get people of different persuasions, different philosophical leanings, and make them to work together.
But in another part of the world, we are seeing a situation where younger elements I imagine as state CEOs.
You're
France,
right.
Name it.
You're right. Sometimes it doesn't. Don't forget that in terms of youth, the country actually has produced more young leaders than any other place. Gowon became head of state at 32, and the oldest, apart from Buhari, the oldest of our leaders was Obasanjo, who became president at 61. So the others are very young. If you look at the governors, most of them were young. Jim Obodo was 39. So when people are talking about generational shift in Nigeria, you always start wondering, is it going to shift from the young to the old? Because the truth is that the young actually had dominated the scene.
Okay, so the president really needs to tidy things fast enough. He says, yes, I acknowledge I'm slow, but I'm slow but steady. That he even promised surprises this time around for Nigerians in terms of the way he will approach this.
Yeah, I don't know about the intentions of president, and I want to believe his intentions are noble. But then we're also told that the intentions are not enough, because even the road to hell was paved with the best of intentions. What we want to do is for president to know there is something called optics. The way people perceive you also determines the way they relate to you. And being sensitive to this perception, how do they see me? How do the very constituents see me and my government? It's not a sign of weakness. That is why in some countries they have private pollsters to give you a feedback on how people perceive you, and then be able to, jig and rejig your governance.
And it's very important, knowing the perception of what perception people have of you,
it's very
the
important.
Followers have of you. It will help you to shape
your policies,
and the way you relate to
them. They have private pollsters. You hire pollsters to be able to give you feedback away from your political acolytes. And whether they read your position, people do it by reading opposition press. And there are some people who deliberately have people from the opposition and who play the devil's advocate, just to give them that sense of reality. Well, you are a tough man because you cannot be bullied by public opinion. But in the end, it is the people that will write your own history, the history of your legacy. You are not going to write it yourself.
Okay. Time for us to go on a break. When we come back, we'll look at policies and programs. Please do stay with us.
The issues as they break. The political actors.
Unless we get a cure for what is ailing our polity, then we will continue to make efforts to perfect it.
Let's keep talking. Sometimes they don't even need to hear, they have to say it. It is their own to be defended.
We all desire a united Nigeria. But let nobody tell us that united Nigeria that all of us want to become will not be negotiated.
The scheming and the intrigue.
In a democracy, the government should be afraid of the people, not the people should be afraid of the government.
If this ugly scenario is not nipped in the bud, I am telling you there will be a time when you are sleeping in your house, you cannot sleep with your two eyes closed. This is a kangaroo coup.
We follow them all. Follow in-depth and no-holds-barred analysis. Feel the pulse of Nigeria's democratic growth only on the IT.
Let it be known to all of us that in this new dispensation, there's no more monkey the walk than
Democracy Today. Nigeria's authority on politics on AIT.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Professor Jideofor Adibe, Professor of Political Science and International Relations from University of, that's Nasarawa State University, in Kefi, Nasarawa State, and a newspaper columnist. He's weighing in, prescribing, recommending options, policies, programs, style for the president who's already on his second term in office. Prince Oyeyemi from our Twitter handle is asking and trying to clarify the statement he heard here that the president referred to ministers as noisemakers. He says he's hearing it for the first time. Yes, before he considered his cabinet in 2015, he made that reference. But Oyeyemi is asking, why did the president accept to serve as a minister of petroleum? He said it was during the military regime. Was he a minister, a federal commissioner?
Federal commissioner.
Federal commissioner. So he accepted to serve as a federal commissioner. But the same functions as a minister, just a change in nomenclature. Now, let's look at programs and policies. Emir of Kano saying subsidy, electricity sector, petroleum sector must go for the economy not to, the roof not to come under the economy. 70% of earnings already going into debt servicing. The president, we know, has a very rigid stance on this, very rigid stance on foreign exchange controls and management. In fact, a lot of people believe the central bank and some of his associates had to nearly turn his hands before they even came up with the current regime in the management of the foreign exchange. But this is a president that wants this subsidy to come. Can he use to pressure? Is it time for him to begin to have a change in policy direction?
Well, let me just say this, that neoliberal mantra about removing subsidies, even the U.S., in the U.S. and other countries, there are subsidies. In the European Union, the farm gate policy of the Common Agricultural Policy subsidizes agriculture by more than 60%.
Even in the US also.
So everywhere there are subsidies. And while I can understand the direction Sanusi was, the MA was heading, I think it will be very calamitous. The people are already, the purchasing power of people have become so much eroded that if you do anything now, the repercussions. For example, if you remove this subsidy now, the transportation cost will go over the roof. People are already complaining about, because you also talked about the electricity tariff, that they are paying for darkness and everything. So we have to be very careful managing how these things are.
Though he prescribed the graduated
yes,
over years.
Yeah, but what people don't really is confusing to people is Buhari, when he was in the opposition, was emphatic that there was no subsidy.
He called it a fraud.
A fraud. And there were so many people, including Tam David West, these are people who had been ministers of petroleum, and they insisted there was no subsidy. Only for us to now find out that we are subsidizing more than we did under the Jonathan regime. And then people are also a little confused. Why is it that we're talking about subsidy when there is when petroleum prices in the international market are collapsing, and even when they are rising? It seems from the time of Obasanjo, it didn't start here, that this idea of removing subsidies,
even during the military dictatorial
that's the time of Obasanjo started it, that it became like every year tool of blackmail from the government. You know,
they do price increase and call it subsidy removal.
Yes, sometimes they engineer the fuel scarcity and everything. That's suspicion that some of this fuel scarcity were engineered, and then some people would then start an argument, we need to remove subsidies so that this will, or remove it a bit and all that. So it is something that we have to come clean on. On the other hand, if you look at kerosene, where they say they remove subsidy, I don't know many people, the number of people who still use kerosene, but it doesn't seem to be creating the kind of thing we have with premium petroleum products. But however happens is that the government should be very sensitive to the spiral effect of any economic policy. If you decide today to remove it, when the Buhari government came in place, they were able to increase the pump price of fuel. People took it on the chin. And yes, you increase the minimum wage to 30,000, but in real terms, in terms of the basket of goods,
the implementation has not started
even if
yet.
it's you implement it, that 30,000 is in real terms.
In dollar terms.
Yes, that's in real terms, less than what the workers we are getting in.
As far back as 1979, somebody did the figures.
Yes,
in dollar term, in 1979, Nigerian workers were receiving more pay.
Not even if you can do it a simple way, the basket of goods it can buy. If you had 10,000 naira 5 years ago, what could you buy with it? If you have 30,000, what can you buy with it? So people have to be very sensitive. But I think the way out is for the government to create wealth. It's not by just saying that I want to fight corruption and everything, while if you create wealth and they percolate, then you will be able to remove subsidies. But when people are already tightening their belt and squeezing the
93 million Nigerians living under poverty.
There's nothing left in their stomach to tighten. And you're talking about more.
Maybe the subsidy, a lot of people believe the subsidy is going to the wrong people. That's what the Labour Congress is saying. We keep subsidizing inefficiency and the rich. No, not the Labour Congress. Some other people. Labour Congress says is the rich that is taking the bulk of it, but how do we retool the subsidy to get to the rich? Because one guest I had there some weeks ago told me that based on the number of vehicles he has, he enjoys more subsidy than his village in his entire village, because they have less number of vehicles.
Yeah, that may be true, but they're only partially true. Yes, you may have 10. If you have 10 vehicles, you probably enjoy more. But if you increase,
because it consumes more PMS.
Yes, if you increase, but also the more you pay, then in absolute terms you pay more. But don't forget that if you just increase it by, say, 10 naira, it's going to reverberate through the entire economy. The cost of bringing food materials from the rural areas to the cities will increase. Transportation costs will increase. And if transportation costs increase, others in the chain will also add to their own. In the end, everybody feels it. Yes, you may be a rich person. You may be able to wither it. The man down below who is already suffering will also feel the impact.
So you see the president continuing with this policy as far as the downstream sector is concerned throughout his second term?
Yes, he can try to do things about those who are. Under Jonathan, we know there were people there were a lot of fraud in the subsidy regime. You can do that, but more importantly, find ways of creating wealth. There are so many wastages in this government, in my own opinion. A good example is the school feeding program. You are spending billions to be able to attract people to stay in school, and many of those schools are just under under threes. There are no teachers.
So where do we put the money? School feeding, raising the quality of teachers and providing infrastructure.
Yes, it's not sustainable. So also the way you fight corruption, discourage people, even people sometimes, you remember there was a time the US made a deal with people who were, going to invest abroad, give them tax holidays, tax forgiveness. In Russia, they used amnesty. The important thing is to encourage people to bring money and invest. Not just that every man who has made money must have somehow stolen it, and therefore you go after them. There are policies that conflict, and if we can find a way of focusing on creating wealth, and of course we can fight impunity, and I think some of these things, it will be easier for some policies to be implemented. But when wealth is not being created, when poverty has become endemic, when we become the poverty capital of the world, there's just so much you can do. There's just because you have now to start getting concerned on poverty alleviation. And this poverty alleviation can come itself if we are able to create the necessary wealth, that will drive the economy.
The president, during his address at the Democracy Day celebration on June 12th, talked about 100 million Nigerians being removed from poverty in the next 10 years. Now, the questions that followed, what are the specific? What's the breakdown? First 4 years to end your tenure in office, and another government takes it. We didn't see much of this. The administration has the Empower, other social investment program. while also trying to inject more money into agriculture and manufacturing to create more jobs. What do you expect them to do more apart from this? Well,
you can bandy any figure. You can even say it's good actually. He said it. You need, profound statements to give people hope. That is one thing, and that's one of the things we talked about. We expected on inauguration there. But coming down to the specific, we have to know quarterly. In the past, how many of your targets were you able to meet? And when you are using 70% of your revenue to service debts, how likely are you to meet it? But it's
and the debt profile will likely increase because for 2019 fiscal year we are to borrow over $2 billion US.
Yes, sir. So we are back to square one. We are back to the debt overhang, and you are talking about lifting people in poverty, which means you can whatever little money you make. That is the way to interpret it. You are not going to invest on growth and wealth creation. You will try to give people handouts so that they will survive, like they did with trader money. I don't know what has become of it. You give people 10,000.
We heard that the next phase, where people will get as much as 50,000 naira, will soon commence.
I think what we are going to look at is to look at the economic team that will be emerged and see the character and the people there. It's not going to be like the last economic team which was made up of lawyers and no economists. Let us see if he's...
some economists, but the man driving it, the former Minister of Budget and National Planning.
Well, I'm not sure of any economist there, but...
The special advisor deployed to the office of the Vice President, I'll record the name now. Is an economist.
Oh well, I'm not aware of that. Let me put it that way. But we need people like many economists, good economic team. People who will be able to have the boldness and the courage to talk to the president on the right economic direction. Not the charlatans and the jobbers and the
those that will be bold enough to disagree with the president.
Disagree. Every person need, even yours. We all need people who can look out in the face and say, no, you're not getting it wrong. Right.
Without expressing fears of job loss or being sacked.
Yeah,
because that has been the problem. Do you insist and you're kicked out?
Well, it depends. There are jobbers, there are people who depend on this. That there are also, I can tell you, several Nigerians who politely,
walk away.
Yeah, walk away. Tell you if it becomes too much, they tell you they have other things to do. But when you see people whose life depend on it, who are jobbers, who are contractors, who will tell you that they are the best thing that has happened to the country since the creation of sliced bread and tuwo shinkapa, then what else?
I believe that when a president comes into office or wins an election, even for a governor at the state level, do you imagine the number of CVs that
come around?
Yeah. Those that will personally send their CVs, those that will use influential people, traditional rulers, top politicians to send CVs. But for me, those that will always make the difference and those that will tell the principal the truth at the risk of losing their jobs are those that are headhunted. Those that were encouraged, pleaded with, come and serve, come and add value.
But there are also people who deliberately set up people they call the devil's advocates. They know your position and they know you're not afraid to look them in the face. You are respectful. They can call you, hey, man, I don't think it's right. They know them. So some people will still, let me say that a leader needs both. You need people to boost your confidence. You are the best in. You also need people who give you a reality check. And it depends on how you say. Some people read the opposition press, those who are interested in people like Babangida and Obasanjo, you'll be sure they do that. And there are people who know one or two people who look themselves, what do you think? But I believe Buhari must have such. I don't think you will have a cabinet like that and all of them are cowards. No. There are still people who are distinguished. They may not make a noise, but you also know that in a system, even when you disagree, because you're just one of many, and you have to somehow believe that probably the president has other information you don't have. You are just an advisor. You are not the enforcer.
Just like former President Obasanjo just said, your job is to advise. My responsibility is to accept or to reject. Because like rightly pointed out, he has other advisors, other areas where he also know he
himself reads a lot. So Babangida, that's one thing unique about them. We may criticize them. These are Babangida and Obasanjo. Despite all their numerous shortcomings, there are leaders very much enamored by ideas. So they can listen to...
You can really confuse them by juggling figures, ideas around.
And they're not intimidated by your ideas or your titles and everything. So with such people, you can tell them, be sure that they're going to make their own research or call other experts to give contrary opinion.
From our Twitter handle, Okolo Kabionye, kudos to your guest. He's being patriotic in his views. The problem is our fathers in leadership positions have failed us, not legacy for young ones to emulate. Removing the so-called fuel subsidy is a suicide program. The multiplier effect of increase in fuel price is enormous. Even the dead require fuel, either to stay in the mortuary or go to the grave. Let us refine fuel in Nigeria. Of course, you need power, electricity.
Yes,
that's a subsidy regime in place there. And if you're using a generator also, diesel, which also, PMS, which is also, is AGO, diesel under subsidy? I think kerosene and AGO are outside.
I think kerosene is outside.
So for those that use these source of energy, they are not relying on subsidy. But let's take a look at security. The president said he's pained on daily basis. The situation is as if it increased as soon as just about when he was winning an election for another term in office. A situation, very huge situation in the Northwest. The commander of the military operation in the Northwest telling us just 2 days ago that it goes beyond banditry and it hovers around jihad and terrorism. So it's a huge problem for the president, apart from the Northeast and the other ones across the nation.
You don't forget that even before the election, the governor of the president's state in Katsina said that even he as governor was not safe. Then governor of Zamfara himself said he will welcome state of emergency. I think when Buhari came to power, the major security challenge was Boko Haram in the Northeast. We must give him credit that he's been able to contain them in a way, though their claims are exaggerated. But then, now we have a situation of Southwest, hitherto a bastion of tranquility, you know, become one of the no-go areas.
Forcing governors and stakeholders 2 days ago to hold a summit.
Yeah, you have even, you go to the North Central, yes, herdsmen farmers clashes had been there all along, but it took a complete life of its own, you know. But the issue is, how are these being managed? I think, again, it comes back to the optics. For example, at a time, there was this endemic suspicion, and Obasanjo was talking about Fulanization without any gap. There was an announcement of a plan to set up a radio station that will broadcast exclusively in Fulfude shortly after Obasanjo. So even if the intention...
Shortly after Obasanjo made that allegation.
So even if the intention was good, the timing was poor. And then not just that, then we come in with this farm settlement scheme in the north, in 12 states.
The Ruga
settlement. Feeding into a particular... Yes, there's a lot of conspiracy theories. We never really know. And then, as if that was not enough, they are talking about Mieti Allah wants to be part of this vigilante in the southeast. So if you join them, maybe conspiracy theory, maybe not.
It falls into
it reinforcing a narrative of a certain agenda, which again may not be right. That is why it is important to be sensitive to your environment. It is very important to be sensitive. If you're sensitive to your environment, you will also know the time to bring in certain policies. That's what we're saying, that for now, the trust, it's very difficult for the government to have the buy-in of many people, especially
even when a policy comes with the best intention.
Intentions are not enough. It's people's perception. People's perception constitute their social reality. And it is their social reality that they will use to relate to what you call objective reality. In other words, that thing you call truth and reality is subjective. It is people's perception, people's belief. It is
which most times is subjective.
It is their reality. So if they believe you are going to Fulanize and they say, ignore them, I know where I'm going, then you are getting it wrong, because it is their perception that is their reality. And I think we have to be conscious of the president should do well to be more sensitive to public opinion and be able to appropriately pace his policies. Otherwise, how is he going to get the buy-in of Nigerians? You look at the Southwest. You can say that even separatist agitation is becoming mainstreamed there, largely because of this the herdsmen crisis, and the government has to look up to it.
And very fast.
And very fast too.
Emmanuel James from our Twitter handle. Your guess is 100% right. Security has never been improved despite several promises by the government. Oluwachede, we have outrageous number of unemployed people in Nigeria. The government must put in place plans to create jobs. This also breeds crimes and hatred. I'm wondering if the president gets honest advice from his advisors. Yeah, all advisors are honest, but are they right or wrong? That's another issue. Sam Clark, the problem of our country seems to be an unending sad tale. Amidst plenty, we are still impoverished. Policies favor just the elites and increases the gap between the rich and the poor. The president is surrounded by people who are very economical with the truth. Jubril Mubarak, the president needs to understand the current service chiefs need to go. Extending their stay in office doesn't help those below them and the country. The country needs new set of chiefs to display their knowledge in tackling security. The president has his men in control of the National Assembly.
Yeah.
So it's going to be different. Do you think it will be different for him now in terms of executive-legislature relations?
I never thought that the problem was with the legislature. After all, the 8th Assembly passed the most bills in the history of this legislature in the country.
So could it be perception issues?
I think the president needs to change his mindset. Without the president changing his mindset, things will not continue to be problematic.
Mindset in terms of?
In terms of being able now to be a little more open, being more sensitive. Yeah, you're a tough man. Wole Soyinka told us that the tiger does not need to proclaim his tigeritude. We already know you're a tough man. So we don't need to prove.
So sometimes when they oppose you, it's not that they are against you?
Yeah, so you're sticking to your gun. That's what some people will do to let people know, look, I cannot be bullied. But everybody knows who Buhari is. You can't bully him.
Well, because I felt the new Senate president ran into a dilemma with the appointment of a special advisor on media, Dr. Festus Adedayo. Should he resist pressures? How would the presidency, the party interpret it?
But that's again one of the areas I disagree with Buhari. When he talked about inclusiveness, I was expecting him to go beyond the party, even to look for people. If you look at the relationship between, for example, Obasanjo and Fani Kayode, they were not always on the same page. But eventually...
Before he appointed?
Yes. So
and they've been best of friends up to today.
Even America and Britain, they fought bitter wars, and they are better allies today. So this idea of triumphalist believe in winner takes all. It's not going to... That mindset, if that mindset does not change, this man is APC, this man did not contribute to your victory, this person gave you, this group gave you 5%, that mindset is not going to, it's not going to make you get the best around. And people are going to resist you. Because if
it becomes more difficult when they go out to offer resistance.
Even under Abacha, even under a military dictatorship, even under his own...
With all your might.
Even all his under Decree 4, people resisted him. So when you say never, others will say nevertheless. So it is only...
And that leads to a state of
stalemate.
Instability.
Stalemate. Of course, it will make the government, historically, anytime the regime gets under pressure and becomes more repressive, resistance increases. So the best way actually is to become more open and be able to bring in more people, and then there will always be elements that will oppose you, and all you do is to do your best to confine them to the fringes.
Okay, can we have your guest regularly on the show? He has an absolute grip of our security challenges in Nigeria. That's coming from Awele Onohwai Senior. He's have been a regular at some point, but I think more in the future you'll be more of a regular.
Well, subject to time.
Subject to time and other demands. Poverty rate is so high, you need to see how people are living I believe when poverty is reduced, people get engaged and crimes reduced, the government should focus on that and not on banning sniper, just to curtail the suicide rates going on. But I believe there must be a response from government, from anybody, when you encounter with a given situation. Banning sniper may be the first step in trying to reduce suicide rate in Nigeria. So to that extent, I welcome it and expect the government to do more. But we must thank you so much, Professor Jida Adibe of Political Science Department, Nasarawa State University, Kefi, also a newspaper columnist with the Daily Trust. Thank you so much for weighing in, and we'll soon have you back here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you also for being part of the program. My name is Amechi Anahwe. Please do have a wonderful day.